These last few weeks, this is the last class on this, we've been talking about Swamiji's practices of working with ego transcendence. Swami Kriyananda wrote the book Sadhu Beware that offers many amazing, beautiful techniques on how to overcome ego. And what he teaches is that the way of renunciation in this age, and really in any higher age, is through transmuting and expanding the ego, releasing it from limitation and self-definition, and releasing it into the infinite. We don't get to God by killing the ego. When we read Yoganandaji's poem, Samadhi, it's all about the offering of the little self, the expansion of the ego. I, the cosmic sea, watch the little ego floating in me. And we want to become the cosmic sea rather than killing the self. We want to expand this little self and merge this little self into the infinite self. And this comes about through ego transcendence, not through ego suppression or killing the ego or getting rid of it. And the answer is giving and thinking always of giving to others, to God, in meditation, devotion, in every possible way. I'll read a technique, one of the techniques. There's 31, 33 of these techniques. Anyways, this is 29. Swamiji writes, an American Swami from another ashram in India once visited me. After some discussion, he asked my advice on something that had been bothering him. How, he wanted to know, should I handle people's respect and reverence? In this country, Swamis are treated as though all of them were saints. I know I shouldn't let it affect me, but what is the best way to overcome that temptation? And after reflecting a little, I said to him, this is Swamiji, don't concentrate on what you are receiving from others. Concentrate on what you are giving out to them. Give them respect, even reverence, as children of God. Never forget that all human beings are equal in Him. One day I was visiting India about 15 years ago, and I was having tea with Swamiji and this American Swami. There was the three of us when this American Swami asked that question. And I was eagerly looking forward to Swamiji's answer, because whether you're wearing a Swami robe or whether you're a minister or an acharya or teacher, yes, there's a temptation to think about what others are thinking of me in my role. And are they thinking highly of me? Did I do a good job? And what do they think? Did I make a fool of myself? What do they think of that? And so there is a temptation to think about ourselves when we're in a role of teaching, sharing, of being seen as a spiritual guide or someone with some wisdom. And again, the answer always is to think, not of what we're receiving, what people think about us, but what we can give. And Swamiji himself talked about this. He said that when he was with Master, he asked him, Master said, you have a role to be a teacher in this life and to spread these teachings. And then he said, he was talking with some of the disciples, and he was talking about some of the minister, teacher disciples who had fallen because of pride and ego and owing to their position. And Swamiji just said, sir, that's why I don't want to be a minister or a teacher. And Swamiji says, for a moment, Master looked down at the ground seriously. Then he spoke quietly, but with great firmness. You will never fall due to ego. But then Swamiji writes something interesting. Why then do I fear? I fear because it is always wise to hold in awe a power which has held us in thrall for so many thousands, perhaps millions of incarnations. But our fear should goad us to love more deeply and not to live on forever in its shadow. Thus I fear my humanity, but I trust in God's love and Master's and in their omnipotence to save even this frail, struggling devotee if I continue firm in my love for them and in my service to all of you. And so this, again, it's always, if we come back to thinking of giving, even in our relationship to God and to the Guru, think always in terms of what we can give. not what we are receiving. Swamiji said in his relationship to Yoganandaji, he said that he was most in tune with him when he didn't think at all of what he was receiving from the Guru, but rather in the thought of what he was giving to him. And he found, he said, that he received great energy, joy, blessings, all these very things that we all seek when he was not at all thinking about asking or wanting them, but only when he was thinking in terms of giving to the Guru. And that's because the way to get in tune with God is to be like God and to love like God and to give like God. Divine Mother, the Guru, they are all giving, not in a personal way because they like this devotee or that devotee, but because they see the light of God in each of us. And so they are only thinking of giving, not what is given to them. And it's a strange thing because when we give to them, it's not them that we're giving to, it's God that we're giving to. But it's just simply that when we give, then we receive so much more. As you give, so shall you receive. This is one of the great sayings of Christ. And so the way out of ego is not to be in fear of falling from ego, not to hide, but to put ourselves out in service and giving to others. And sometimes it looks like it's coming from ego because it's a very bold, proactive giving that's needed at times to serve others and to lead a project or to lead others in spiritual attunement and leadership. But it's always a sense of giving when it really is true ego transcendence. And so ego transcendence isn't hiding out again. It's not a negative renunciation. Swamiji said the way of renunciation in this age is positive. It's what we do and what we give. It's bliss affirming rather than life negating. And this is very important to learn how to transcend the ego, because when we think always in terms of giving, then we will not fall from ego. And Swamiji said it's a fear. He said it's been around for countless lifetimes, so it's real. He said we should respect that, but don't be afraid. If we are in tune, if we give, if we love, if we have devotion for the Guru, if we have attunement to the Guru will protect us. The Guru will lift us up, and the Guru will teach us how to transcend ego, and in the end, help us in dissolving the bondage and the tightness and the self-definition of that ego. And so again, think in terms of expansion rather than killing it and contracting it. Think in terms of offering it into the light where it just expands and grows and merges and becomes with the infinite self. I, the cosmic sea, watch the little ego floating in me. So now Premdas will share a few things.
Thank you, Devashiji. Yeah. So it's always nice for all of us to just think of those points which Devashiji said about how we are transmuting it and not suppressing it. So each time, whenever I think each day, I think we'll have to make so many decisions, and each time we just make sure our hearts are open and we are thinking upward and uplifted thoughts and always trying to do something which is transcending the ego. I think that's the whole battle of Kurukshetra in many ways. And today I would also like to repeat it. Maybe the other monks also might have shared this earlier, that medulla is the point of the ego origin. So many times we get to feel this point whenever I think you become aware of this point whenever you feel your ego is you can feel your ego, and many times it helps if you can just relax and try to offer it up. So awareness precedes control. So first, I think becoming aware of energy being struck here, many times during the day, you can become aware of it. And then you can try to make it flow forward to the spiritual life, somehow relaxing it. I think this itself is a nice practice and a nice technique for all of us to have as we keep progressing on the spiritual path. Today, I'll be choosing the points from 11 to 15. And thank you all for joining us today. And so the point number 11 of technique number 11 is never, Swamiji says, never belittle anyone. View all with respect. Release from your heart any desire you may feel to outshine others or even to shine at all in whatever you do. Do the best you can always, but give the fruits of your efforts to God. This is such a nice point that many times it's always a battle again within ourselves in the beginning of the spiritual path, always trying to offer everything up to God and always scanning whether we are stepping in the wrong direction. So, one story, I was recently watching a satsang of Nirmala ji, and she was sharing this story. So, I thought I'll share with all of you. So, I think this in this time, some devotees and herself had gone to a devotee's house for a lunch or for a big this thing. Lunch was spread out and all the devotees were there and they all were enjoying a particular dish, and so all of them started to thank her and appreciate that dish. And this person smilingly said, I am the doer. She was just joking, but she was also a fun, and she said, I am the doer. And then there was one more dish which turned out to be not so okay. Everybody felt, what happened here? And they also were in all jovial mood, so they pointed out to her. So what happened to this dish? She said, God is the doer. So, and the story goes this way. So, but the moral of this is, even though she was joking, I think she realized it. And all of us, we have to make sure that God is the doer, even in success or failure, not just in success or failure, but in everything. Just somehow bring God into the picture and make sure God is the doer. So, the next point, never try without some good and definite reason to justify your actions, ideas, or accomplishments. Whatever you have done, give it mentally to God. I think when I thought of this particular point, I remember, I think, in one of the videos and many places where Swamiji offers this small technique where at the night, each time before we go to bed, create a mental bonfire and try to offer up all attachments. I think this might be a good practice for many of us to follow during some every day or even whenever we think of this practice, so that each day before we go to sleep, we are like free of all the attachments and we are ready to merge back into God. It's like each day when we get up the next day, we are born free again, born new. So this might be a good practice for all of us. Okay, so the next point, I'll just keep going. Try always to impersonalize your impressions. So here Swamiji shares a story. I would like to read it for you. Swamiji says, I remember once many years ago during a gathering of SRF renunciates, someone challenged a particular musical sequence in a chant. A musically gifted nun on that occasion announced firmly, this is how it should go. Another nun answered her, what makes you so certain? Then Swamiji says, I still remember the ego in the first woman's voice as she replied, my ear tells me. The musical nun left her monastic calling soon afterwards. After she had done so, I reflected on the little statement she had made and on the way she had made it. Already in those four words were revealed a resurgence in her of ego consciousness. So Swamiji says, try never, therefore, to make yourself the justification of any utterance you make. I don't mean you should not call on your experience, but however you could say some, the nun could have replied like, I know owing to my, instead of that, she could have just said like, just listen sensitively. Can't you hear the difference? So I think Swamiji was telling there are ways in which even while having to tell someone's mistakes or something, when you know something of certain, you can make it such a way that you're not speaking from your ego, like the way he suggested. Just listen sensitively. Can't you see can't you hear the difference? So I think this might be a good point for all of us to reflect on, because many times we are all good at few things and many times we are not good at other things. I somehow feel whenever we are not good at other things, God is just beside us. And whenever I think I'm doing it or I'm good at something, it's sometimes hard to draw an inspiration. So this might help us to somehow, even while helping others around us to somehow bring God into everything. So the next technique, which is here, always be guided by principles and not by desires. Especially if you find yourself in a leadership position, never impose your desires or your likes and dislikes on others. On the other hand, be careful how you let them impose their feelings and wishes on you. As Yogananda said to us, don't be a doormat, be firm inwardly, while letting principles be as much as possible your guide while making every decision. So I think this, because many times we also work with brothers and we make all decisions. So maybe many times I also try to make sure, try in this direction. There's a lot of learning to do still. I think you all would have realized too that when you work with your families and everything, you have to make some decisions, and always try to remember that your decisions is not based on your own likes and more on the principles. For example, one of the principles all the Ananda members follow is Yato Dharma Tato Jaya, where there is righteousness, there is victory. So I think somehow those concepts or principles will help you to make decisions many times. Like people are more important than things. This is one more principle which Ananda members we all follow. So I think many times these principles will help us to make that decision when it gets harder. So I think one more last point here for I've chosen here. Stand for what you feel is right, but try to make clear always that you're not trying to impose on anyone values that are merely personal. Base your values on abstract principles. So again, continuing on the last point on how abstract principles helps us, I also found this few lines of Swamiji. I'll just read it out to you. For clearly, this is, I've taken this small from a passage of his. For clearly, all of them are dedicated to principles that are universal. In the matter of abstract principles, there is a widespread unanimity. It is for the specific application of those principles that the different religions vary. So I think we all can agree that all the religions, in one way, the most common principle is love, love others, serve others. But somehow, when it comes to specific application of it, all these religions start happening, all the way we all think. So somehow, in this point, if we somehow can we all try to agree on the basic universal principle, then all will try to join hands, and we all can create a much more peaceful world instead of creating differences among us. Now, I would like to request Devashiji to share.
I'll read number 32. Swamiji writes, don't let your mind play with the thought of where and how you yourself fit into any picture. Don't toy with flattery by entertaining it even lightly in your mind. Reject sternly any thought of self-importance, self-praise, self-justification, and blame. This subject is as important for you as your own salvation, for your spiritual liberation depends upon release from ego consciousness. There's more to this particular one, but it's very important. I think I shared this also in week 1, but I'm going to focus on the last paragraph. I'll skip ahead, where Swamiji writes, seek in every way possible to expand your energy and consciousness away from yourself. In other words, don't expand your self-awareness like a balloon. Release it from all self-definition. Be quite stern with yourself in this practice, no matter how carefree you may seem in others' eyes. Swamiji was quite stern with himself. He was joyful, supportive with others, but he was, I wouldn't say hard on himself. He was just very clear that even the slightest playing with delusion of hearing some flattery and just the temptation just to kind of identify with it or with blame, it's binding. And the way out, Swamiji says, is to expand our energy and consciousness away from this little self. And again, he says, don't blow it up like a balloon, because a balloon is still contained. It's just kind of making ourselves, our little ego, a bigger little ego, because it still has a self-definition and a boundary. And what happens if someone's like a really egotistical person and they keep blowing up their ego bigger and bigger, it pops and explodes and it doesn't dissolve back into the infinite. It crashes them more likely. So he says, don't expand your self-awareness like a balloon. Release it from all self-definition. Release ourselves from all self-definition. Very often towards the end of his life, for some reason, he would talk about how most people are a bundle of self-definitions. And it's very true. We define ourselves. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have this relationship with that person and that role with that person. I'm their superior, I'm this or that, I'm a teacher, and they're the student. And we're just a bundle of ways of just defining who and what we are. And this is the outer layer of the balloon, which we just want to not even have that outer layer by not defining ourselves by our role or any aspect of separation from God. And so when we can just turn our identification towards God, and again, it's not just identifying with God, it's by giving to God. Because when we give, as Swamiji says, this in every way possible expands our energy and consciousness away from ourselves by giving. And there's no boundary between us and God. It just a continual expansion of giving, serving, loving in meditation, in prayer, in service, in giving to God, in others, in everything that we do. And just do it, realize that it almost doesn't matter what we do, whether you're teaching a class or cooking a meal or being in a business relationship or a role. More important is how we do it, with a sense of freedom, kindness, giving to others, giving to God and others. And the more and more that we can do that, this is the way we dissolve this little self and expand it away from ourself into the infinite self. This is the way of ego transcendence that Swamiji gave us. And it's essential to our liberation, and it is the cause of our bondage. So this is a very important topic. And again, I would highly recommend picking up that book, Sadhu Beware, and studying these techniques of ego transcendence. So Brahmachari Primdas will share a song, I think.
Okay, thank you, Devashiji. Yeah, I think so. Now, I think what Devashiji shared about ego transcendence, and also I just remembered the last statement I made about how many religions have the universal teachings the same as love, and somehow we bring in all the other definitions, and somehow we all seem different. So last year, I think 2019, Devashiji, somehow we all the brother, few of the monks here, we all got to visit Ananda village for the 50th anniversary. And there was this pilgrimage to all the master shrines. And during one of the shrine, we had some time. So I think Devashiji took out his phone and I think he found an Armenian coffee shop, I think it is. So he took us there. And so we just went in. So they had all these, it was different. It was empty. Only we were there. So it was early morning also, maybe around 10:30 or 11. And we all sat down. I think we all had time. And so we thought, let us anyway practice the song Brothers, because we had to sing it the other time. And so we started singing. And somehow there was a kid in the thing who belonged to a different religion or something. I don't want to differentiate, but somehow he felt like he had a different path. But when he started singing, when he started hearing all of us sing the brothers, he also joined us. He gave us some microphone. It was just so much joy and fun. So with that same feeling, I would like to encourage you all now to sing this song along with all of us. Maybe turn on your videos, sing along with us, and I'll just share the video now. It's 3 minutes long, please. And I think lyrics will be shared by Ashish ji, and we'll all sing together. So I'll just, okay. Okay, here we go.
I've lived in many countries and mixed with many men.
I've shared the days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain.
The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend.
My officers had said I must hate him till the end.
But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers.
One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands.
The words we used were different, but joy one understands. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. The words and customs vary like waves upon the sea. One life beneath the surface finds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
Okay, thank you all. It's been a joy sharing these practices on ego transcendence. Next week, we'll have a different topic for the next month, which will be announced. And I believe there are no healing prayers this evening, as we often do, because there's another satsang beginning sometime soon. So see you all. Have a blessed, happy, holy this coming couple of days.